everyone, and welcome to another Warrior Woman segment. I'm your host, Leigh-Anne Williams, and today our Warrior Woman webinar is powered by Engen and brought to you by Good Hope FM. It's so wonderful to be here. This is the third in a series of incredible webinars. If you tuned in last week, I know that you were moved and just completely blown away by the incredible panelists that we had. And this afternoon, we continue with that as well. So I'm super excited to introduce them to you. Before we do that, I want to welcome you to this webinar as well. And I hope that you registered on www.goodhopefm.co.za, because if you did, you could stand a chance to, at the end of the webinar, walk away with a 1,000 Rand Engen voucher, as well as a 1,000 Rand Canal Walk shopping voucher. And I don't know if you're the same as me, that really does come in handy at a time like this. So every single week we have a different theme for our webinar, and today we're talking about something that resonates really, really closely with me because it's so needed right now. We're talking about the area of finances. Now, just to give you a little statistic, according to TransUnion, 79% of South Africans say that their household income has been negatively affected by the pandemic. Between February and April, research has shown that 3 million South Africans have lost their jobs. Of those 3 million, 2 million of them were women. And I think we all know that this pandemic has disproportionately affected women in comparison to men. And that's why we have this Warrior Woman segment, so that we can help each other and grow our financial education along the way and our financial literacy. So I would like to bring our panelists in to help us along this journey, introducing very firstly a woman that is no stranger to Good Hope FM, because you would have heard her voice before. Tselani Ntuli is the co-founder and COO of Yalu, an innovative digital credit life insurance company that is being hailed as a disruptor in South Africa's financial services industry. Yalu is one of only 3 credit life insurance companies in South Africa. Tselani is regarded as a pioneer for Black women in the credit life insurance sector and is a seasoned professional who has served as a general manager of brand and marketing at Glenrand MIB, a senior marketing manager at Old Mutual's Mass Foundation Cluster, a head of growth for sales and marketing at the F&B Life Executive Committee, and also brand manager at Liberty Life. What a CV. She's here. Tselani, welcome to the Warrior Woman webinar. It's so good to have you here, my darling.
Hey, Leanne, oh my gosh, what an introduction. It almost feels like you're not talking about me.
Girl, I am talking about you. You've done so much in your life, and it's been so incredible. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget the road that we've walked to get to where we are here today. And this is why we're chatting to you, because we've spoken on the radio before about credit, you know, understanding credit. I think so many times we have a fear of it. But let's talk about your money journey and where it all started for you and your relationship with money. Where did it all begin?
Sure. I mean, I think the thing about money and relationship is it's an ongoing thing. You know, you can never really say when it started or when it ends. It's kind of something that you go along with as life goes on, right? But I graduated from UCT, so at heart I'm still Cape-Townian. I worked for almost all the 4 big banks. I know there's 5 now, but the only one I haven't worked for is the Blue Bank, but all the others I've worked for. Then I found myself in insurance, which wasn't a natural sort of progression for me, but it happened because at the time I was really excited about job hopping so I could make more money, and I wanted the biggest title I could find. So I found myself in insurance, and I've been in insurance ever since. I absolutely love it. But what has occurred to me is that there is a lot of lack of understanding and lack of knowledge that goes or that happens in insurance specifically. And so when I was at F&B and I was the head of sales and marketing there, one of the products that I had to sell, or that my team had to sell, was credit life insurance. And it was something that I had never heard of myself, despite the fact that I had been been in financial services for so long. And I was really taken aback by it, because when my father died 5 years ago, he had a credit card. I didn't know about credit life insurance at the time, so never bothered to check whether he had credit life insurance. And years later, when I eventually found out about it, I realized that he actually did have credit life insurance. So I could have claimed on the credit life insurance to pay for the credit card. By then, I was already at FMB. So I've kind of become really passionate about making sure that people know and understand what they have. And I'm kind of calling it financial empowerment, and sort of moving from or kind of transitioning from financial literacy and financial education before you get to financial freedom. I think there's a step that's missing, which is called financial empowerment, which is really all about owning your journey, taking responsibility for your own financial portfolio, understanding your rights, and sort of practicing that, right? So I think there's a lot of reliance on financial services companies sharing information and educating us, while as an actual fact, as a consumer, I have a right and I have an obligation to myself to actually own that journey, to gather as much information as possible, to try and have as deep an understanding of my own financial portfolio as I possibly can, and to start to do things a little bit differently. Because when you take the power back, you have a lot more energy, I think, to negotiate. You have a lot more energy to demand better rates. And I've got a little bit of a slide on it that I'll share. I don't know when the right time is, you can let me know. But I'm really
I love that, and I love that you spoke about financial empowerment, because financial empowerment is the thing that we want to talk about. We're going to do that in a young second. Thank you so much, Talani. I'm so excited that you are here. And to introduce our next guest, another person that I'm so excited to introduce to you, she is the published author of the book, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich. I'm here for that. You're not broke, you're pre-rich. She's an award-winning personal finance coach, a speaker, the founder of Women in Finance, which aims to educate and to inspire women to take charge of their finances and make the best financial decisions for their current and their future selves. Now, through the Women in Finance platform, she has collaborated with some of South Africa's best financial minds to create content and generate fresh and relevant insight into an area that so many of us feel unqualified to engage in. She has over 6 years of experience in the financial services industry and is also a personal finance columnist for City Press. Mapalo Maku, welcome to Good Up FM's Warrior Women webinar. So good to have you here.
It is amazing to be here, Leanne. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to Good Hope FM for having me, and for everyone who's joined in on the webinar today. And yes, I am very, very passionate about teaching or educating women specifically about personal finance. And for me, I think, yeah, my first or my most vivid memory, if I should call it, my most vivid memory of money or of personal finance or realizing money is a big deal was at the age of about 9, when my mother, who used to work for the government, and my father, who was in varsity at that point, he went to varsity, and my mom had to take care of 4 kids, 4, okay? And I would demand stuff. I'd be like, okay, mom, I need this, I need that. And my mother one day showed me her payslip. And for me, it was such an eye-opener. That's when I realized just how important money is, how important it is to be aware of money and what it means and how it can affect or impact your life. So for me, it started at a very young age. And I love what Talani has just mentioned now, that I think for especially women, and I always gravitate towards women, is that you cannot outsource your financial journey. You cannot outsource it to the financial services industry. You cannot outsource it to your partner. You cannot. You cannot outsource it to a financial advisor. You need to educate yourself and be empowered first, so that when you go to financial services companies, you can ask the right questions, number one, but also you do not get taken for a ride, quite frankly, you know? So for me, I'm really passionate about teaching women how all of these things work, and, you know, just so that they set a solid foundation for themselves, so that they become more confident when it comes to making their money decisions, so that they become more confident that, you know what, I have the right type of investments and I'm making the right decisions with my money. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and why I love talking about money so much.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to be coming back to you in a moment, Mapalo. I love that we gravitated to the same color. We'll definitely share a connection there, and we'll definitely be connecting a little bit later on. My next guest has managed to build a career around her passions: dance, social media, events, and talent management. Now, she founded the Duma Collective, which has a mission to be an innovative and agile industry-leading creative communication agency that attracts and retains accountable, passionate, and reliable talent to produce era-defining work. Now, she has worked on some era-defining projects like Casper Nyovest's Fill Up the Dome, Fill Up F&B Stadium, Fill Up Orlando Stadium. She's worked with artists like Reason and KO and The Muffins, to name a few. And her creative agency employs 7 people. She says sacrifice or compromise will be while being diplomatic is how she gets the job done. Welcome to Cebu, Mabena. So good to have you here with a little bit of a yellow background. I think we're flowing. We're definitely flowing.
Seems
Welcome.
to be the color of
so
the day.
It does. Cebu, let's talk about your earliest understanding of the value of money.
Sheesh. I think anyone that went to a primary school with a tuck shop would understand what money was, because our parents would give us, you know, tuck money to be able to purchase things. And I think I had this thing of trying to bank and pool all my money so I could buy what I really wanted, instead of trying to buy the little bit with the little bit I had at that moment. So I've learned how to save, and in anticipation for the bigger things, so I could buy a pie. Instead of buying a lollipop every day of the week, I'd buy a pie on a Friday. So I think that's where the mentality of like sacrifice a little bit now so that you can get the big thing later came from. So yeah, that's actually my earliest recollection of my relationship with money.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about this relationship because I think it's really important to understand where your earliest associations with money and the value of money come from. And I want to start off once again with Tlalani, because we were chatting yesterday and we were talking about the fact that we have experienced so much loss, not only as South Africans, but the world, because of this pandemic. And I think there's so much healing that needs to take place, not only physically, but also in the terms of our finances. Because if there's one thing that people have spoken about time and time again, it is how much their finances have taken a knock. Just to give you some of the frequently asked questions, some people have said, how do I make it through 2020 financially? How do I start saving when I have no money to save? I might have money to save, but how do I maximize my savings? A lot of people asking questions about retirement savings, and also how good or get rich quick schemes. I think we already know the answer to those things, but I'm going to start off with you, Tlalani. How do women empower themselves financially? You talked about owning this journey that we're on. This journey, I think, has taken a little bit of a detour. 2020 is looking a whole lot different to what we thought it would be. We were all 2020, 2020 vision, and now we're just like, can 2021 come? How do we empower ourselves financially going forward? Of course, having to reimagine a very different future.
So I think I love that question because I'm going to answer it in a way that probably most people wouldn't expect. The first thing I want to say is having a relationship with money can be quite an emotional thing, right? In the same way that you have a romantic relationship, which is emotional, a work relationship, which is emotional. Relationship with money is emotional. So the first thing I want to say to the people that are listening to us today is forgive yourself for all the money mistakes that you made, for all the bad decisions. Forgive yourself and get over it, because the more you wallow in the self-pity of, oh my God, I am in so much debt, oh my God, why is this happening to me? The longer it's going to take for you to get out of that rut, okay? So I want to share this one slide with you, because this is what I am, or I've been thinking a lot about what does financial empowerment mean, and where does it fit in the journey. Okay, so let me see. How's that going? Okay. So I think for me, the thing that we hear a lot about, as I've said a little bit earlier, is financial literacy. Okay, I'm not getting this right. Okay, anyway, that's all right. Let me talk to it. So we hear a lot about financial literacy.
Yeah.
Can you see that now? Okay. So we hear a lot about financial literacy and financial education. And as I've said earlier, these are the parts of the learning about money journey that a lot of the time are owned by the financial services organizations, right? And they're really about teaching you the basics. The literacy part is, what's the terminology, the concepts. So let's take interest rate as an example. In the literacy side, in the literacy part of the journey, what we're going to be learning is really basic things. What is interest rate, right? Then you move on to the education. In the same way that you would as a student, you first have to be literate before you can start being educated, right? So when you move on to the education piece, that's starting to be, that's the part of the journey where you're starting to acquire the skills and you're starting to apply them and you're really starting to gain some experience around money. And so in that part of the journey, to use the example of the interest rate again, we're talking about what's the best possible interest rate for me? And at that point, you probably still understand that you're treated more as part of a bigger group of consumers than as an individual. But what I want to introduce people to today is this concept of financial empowerment, which in my mind comes just before financial freedom. So if we are all trying to get to financial freedom, which is that place where we have comfort, we're able to afford the life that we want, and we're now earning interest versus paying interest, there's something in between the financial literacy and education and financial freedom that I think is really missing and hasn't been spoken enough about. And that for me is the part where we talk about the owning of the financial conversation. So this is where you are now going out and looking for the best interest rate, not for the group of consumers that you belong to, but for yourself as an individual, because that's who you are. And so if we move on to what is it going to take for me to achieve this financial empowerment? Very simply, and one of the things I really don't like about a lot of how financial education is done by some of the big financial services companies is there's a lot of jargon and there's a lot of very difficult concepts that are not simplified and made possible for me as an individual who's not in that field. So I've tried to choose really simple terminology. Basics, do your research. Research is critical. And research isn't about going into a library and finding books and spending hours and hours in Google. It's simple things like taking your policy documentation that you've got, taking your terms and conditions and reading through those. That's part of the research you need to know. Enable knowledge. So build the knowledge base that you're coming with, right? Exploring alternatives. So, when my dad was still alive, he had a relationship with the Blue Bank, and it was from when I was first aware that there is such a thing as a bank until he was 78 and possibly. He's only ever had a relationship with the one bank. But we have choice now as consumers. There's lots of alternatives that are available to us. We need to explore those, because in exploring alternatives is where we get the power to do some negotiating. When you're in this part of the journey to financial empowerment, think individualistically. So I'm going to negotiate on the basis of my portfolio, not on the basis that I'm a Black woman who happens to have been an executive and earn a certain amount of money, right? Initiate the conversation. So don't be afraid to take your financial services partner to task and find the right solutions for you. Negotiate, I've spoken to already, and then ownership, which is the biggest and most important piece. If you don't own your own financial journey, if you outsource it, then actually what's going to happen is someone else is going to take advantage of you. And we've seen that happen a lot in credit life insurance, which is why there's been such a high level of lack of awareness and lack of knowledge and lack of understanding around credit life insurance, which is really put people in a bad way.
Yeah, Tlalani, we actually have a comment here from Caroline who says, why are financial service providers not held accountable for not informing clients that they have credit life cover?
So think about it. Who is meant to hold them accountable? Just for a second, think about that. You are their customer. Who do you expect to hold financial services companies accountable if not you? The government has made institutions available for you to hold your financial services companies accountable. You have the ombudsman, you have the national credit regulator, you have the financial services, FSCA, FSCA. All of those are organizations that have been set up to regulate the financial services industry, one, and two, for you as a consumer to be able to say, hold on, there's something I'm not happy with, and actually I want to take my financial services organization to court. You have every right to do that. Nobody's going to do the work for you. You have to do it for yourself. And that's why I talk about financial empowerment. Financial empowerment means we get off our butts and we do the work ourselves. We demand better. We deserve better. So we expect to be treated better by financial services organizations.
Yeah, and we have to take responsibility. I think now more than ever, we have to stop pushing the buck and we need to actually take responsibility for our own personal financial journeys. Mapalo, I was listening to a podcast of yours not too long ago where, and it's also tied into something that Tlalani said, you referred to money as energy. And I thought that that was actually such a powerful concept. Do you want to just explain to us the story around how you came to define money as energy?
Yeah. So, Leanne, you know what? Actually, I said this yesterday. I had another webinar that I was doing, and someone had asked me a similar question, but had said, okay, no, how do you make sure if you are going from someone who's never saved, someone who's never done the right stuff with their money, how do you go from a point of, you know what, I don't have enough, there isn't much coming in, or, you know, I've been taken for a ride before. How do you go from that? And I said exactly the same thing. I said, money is energy, right? It is it's something that happens once you've done the right things. Let me put it that way, right? Yeah. It happens once you have done the right things. And so getting money, obviously, you know, you need to show up. You know that you need to implement the right stuff. So oftentimes, actually, when people think about money, they think, you know what, it means deprivation. It means that I can't do the stuff that I like to do. But I always say that I'm not the type of personal finance person who talks about, no, don't do anything, don't drink your morning coffee. Do all of those things, sure, but make sure that you have done the right things first. So what are the right things? Educating yourself, and I'll always forever be an advocate of educating yourself first, empowering yourself first, and taking action steps to make sure that your finances are in order. So doing the right things means you need to save, you need to invest, you need to make sure that your risk is mitigated. So for me, when I say money is energy, it means that everything that you think, because actually I have done a coaching session with a lady, unfortunately she was almost 65, and she said to me, you know what, I wish there was no money in the world. I wish, you know, I could just be a rolling stone, not having to worry about these things. And unfortunately, her life reflected that she didn't want money in her life. So she was forever in debt. Yeah. She was about to retire. She didn't have any retirement savings at all. She had to rely on her kids who were struggling as well. So when I say money is energy, it means that literally every single thought that you have about money, which translates into the actions that you take about money, reflect. Wow. So it's not really just about, okay, you know, it's not just about the tangible money stuff. And oftentimes when we talk about personal finance or money empowerment or coaching, whatever you want to call it, we often talk about the numbers, but we forget that it starts here. Financial empowerment, financial literacy, financial, whatever it is that you want to put a name on, it starts within. So knowing that you deserve it, knowing that you're going to do the right stuff with your money, because money it has principles. Just like anything in life, it has principles. If you do not apply the right principles to it, you can make as much as you want, but you'll never have enough of it either way. Because we've seen, I mean, I know there's that ridiculous show on TV where, you know, people make it and completely lose it all because they never got the education, they never got to implement themselves the principles of how money works, and then they end up in a very dire situation. So money is energy. It's not about the actual money. It's about all the principles, who you are, and what you think about it. That makes a difference.
This is such a crazy time, and we are getting so many amazing messages coming through. Please feel free to message our panelists. I will read them as we go along. Sibu, I want to chat to you right now. You are an agency that represents some of the biggest artists in the country, and we all know that the entertainment industry, like the hospitality industry, like the tourism industry, like so many industries, has been incredibly hard hit at the moment. When it comes to staying financially sound for people that are in fields where they don't necessarily have a 9-to-5, they, you know, no work, no pay, what would your advice be? Oh, I think that we might have lost Cebu there for a young second. We're going to try and get her back. Tlalani, can I come back to you? There is a question currently that says, I've been back and forth with the bank to get credit life insurance resolved. I was told, unfortunately, at the time I was offered the credit card, the offer was not included. I was under the impression that this is automatic when the product is offered.
And this is the point I make around, you know, people making sure that they own the journey themselves and find the information. Credit life insurance is mandatory on certain products, but not on others. So on personal loans, it's mandatory. On loans, on home loans below a certain amount, depending on the provider, it's usually about below $1 million. It's mandatory. But on credit cards and on vehicle finance, for example, it is not mandatory. So there you have the opportunity and the choice to take credit life insurance with whomever you so wish to do. So they're right, unfortunately, Kara, it doesn't automatically get included when you take up a credit card. Usually what would happen is they will call you straight after you've taken your credit card to sell it to you. But if they didn't do that, then you likely don't have credit life insurance on your credit card.
Okay, thank you so much, Tlalani, for being our sounding board there. Back to you, Sibu, you're back. Yay, we're so happy. I was mentioning a bit earlier on, of course, you've got the Duma Collective. You represent some of the biggest artists in the country. And like we know, the entertainment, the hospitality, the tourism industry, so many industries are hard hit. People that are freelancers, people that have their own businesses, people who are their own businesses know what it's like to sit without work at the moment and thus sit without finances. How does one stay financially sound at this time, now knowing that pandemics can happen, because it didn't ever happen in our lifetime? They can happen, they are real, they could very well continue to happen. Where should we begin in just making sure that from now on, we take care of our financial journey?
So I think what Tlalani said earlier about forgiving yourself for all the bad financial decisions you've made up till now is crucial. First of all, no one was born knowing. So now is the opportunity for us to educate ourselves, to look to the knowledge bank that exists to say, okay, how do I now do better going forward? But what I've been preaching since I was a freelancer back in the day was I don't want to spend money that is still coming. I'd rather rely on what I have. So I don't say, oh, I did a job and I've got an invoice that's going to pay me in 30 days. So many things can happen between today and 30 days where the person who was supposed to process the invoice for a PO falls sick, and then the PO gets lost in the system, and then the finance person can't find it, and then procurement can't find the contract, and then 30 days becomes 60 days, next thing you know, it's 90 days. It doesn't matter what contract you have in place. If the people were not able to process the payment, they're not able to process the payment. Now you've gone and told your rent person that, no, I'll pay you in 30 days. You've gone and bought something at Louis Vuitton because you thought, there's money coming. No, do not live like that. We can't afford to, as we have seen with this pandemic, right? So I think what is important, savings. We've been hearing savings for our entire lives, but now it's actually a real thing. How do you make sure that you've got a cushion so that you're able to live beneath your means for a rainy day, when a rainy day does come, as we've seen will come? Another thing I think is having multiple sources of income. That's so important. It doesn't matter that you have a stable 9-to-5. The people who have stable 9-to-5s have now undergone salary cuts, retrenchments, all sorts of destabilizing things that have come up as a result of this pandemic. I think people are now realizing that if I had an extra income coming from doing something like baking or doing hair or babysitting or tutoring, all these other things that don't require hectic capital, just to have an extra additional source of income. So with the artists that I work with, it's never just, okay, you do music and that's that, or you are a performer and that's that. Now that there aren't any bookings, how else are we monetizing what you're able to do? So Mutsirisi Mohono, who is an incredible presenter, by God's grace still had the salary from Supersport, but on the side, we had to find ways for her to monetize her brand. So doing brand campaigns. With someone who is an actress, how are you doing the same on her social media? With a DJ, we turned him into an executive producer of a TV show. So all of these different ways of monetizing the other things that they aren't necessarily known for is what we've had to come up with the ideas to do. And I think my message to everyone is innovate around your skill set. You're not a human that can only do one thing. Find ways to have multiple sources of income and then save so that when a rainy day comes, you're cushioned.
Yeah, we got to have those side hustles. Those side hustles are more important than ever before. I don't know, have we been able to get Lalani back? Because there's a question that is big. There is a single parent. I didn't get your name. She said, I'm a single parent. How do I save when I have no money to save? Maybe just a starting point, I think.
So I actually love what both Mapalo and Siba said. First, Mapalo said, you know, I'm not the kind of personal finance person that's going to tell you to stop having your cup of coffee if that's what you love to do. Because actually, your cup of coffee is probably the thing that gives you your sanity. And oftentimes what you hear is people telling you about how do not take your children out for takeout on a Friday. But actually, that's all your children look forward to is a Friday takeaway night, you know? So now you're taking off all the things that you've been saying just so you can have a little bit of money that was probably never going to be enough to begin with. So I really do concur with that view to say, and what I like about what Siba said is around innovating. We've got to start thinking more innovatively around saving. So one of the big things that I have been advocating for is looking at your current financial services portfolio. What products fit in there? And is there a saving you can do from moving one product from one provider to another? Let's take a bond as an example. If your bond is with Bank A, and Bank A is giving you prime plus 5 interest rate, go to Bank B and say to Bank B, listen, I've got a bond of R1 million with Bank A. This is the interest rate they're offering me. Would you be willing to relook that interest rate if I move the bond to you? Most likely, they will say yes. Go back to Bank A. Hi, Bank A. Did you know that Bank B is now offering me prime plus 2 and not prime plus 5 like you? And Bank B will likely say, oh, shoot. We will offer you prime less 1. Not only are we going to say prime plus, we're going to say prime less. That is the power of having choice. That is the power of owning your journey and saying, I am not prepared to accept the least that is provided to me. I want to get the best that is provided to me. And the best means when you have choice, when you've got 5 big banks in the country instead of 1 or 2, you can play them against each other. That's allowed. There's nothing wrong with that. They do it to you, you can do it to them. So let's talk about how you can, one of the other things you can do to innovate. One of the other things, and a good example, credit life insurance. You think to yourself, I have to have it with my bank because that is where my loan is. Actually, no, the law says if you find an alternative credit life insurance provider that covers and that covers the basic benefits of what a credit life insurance policy must have, which is death, disability, and retrenchment, then guess what? You can move your credit life insurance to whichever other provider. Now, some providers will give you a level credit life insurance fee, which means whether you owe 100 Rand or whether you owe 5 Rand, your credit life insurance premium is the same. Other providers will give you a declining fee, which means as you pay your loan, there you are saving a little bit of money every month because you're only paying, as you pay your loan, your premium reduces, you're only paying for the balance of the loan. So already by moving your credit life insurance from one provider to another, you've been able to save money. And the same thing applies. So if you look at your bond, sorry, I know I'm going on a little bit too long, but I'm really passionate about this. If you look at your bond as an example, and you say to yourself, okay, so I have a credit card of 20,000 Rand and I have a bond of 1 million and I've paid off, say, 200,000 Rand. So I actually owe 800 and I've got an excess of 200. I can actually go and access the 200,000 Rand. I can take 20,000 Rand out of my bond, pay off my credit card because the credit card debt is more expensive than the bond debt. On the bond, you're paying 7 + 2, so probably 9% interest. Guess what you're paying on the credit card? 20% interest rate. So there again is saving. So these are the basic things that we need to empower ourselves with so that we can understand that saving doesn't always mean money coming out of your pocket. It means being innovative around finding solutions that will help you save a little bit of money on products that you already have.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I am taking it all in. As people, you also raised your hand. You're like, pick me, I want to say something about that. Unmute. You're muted. There we go. We can't hear you.
It's a even as a normal citizen of the Republic of South Africa who doesn't have a financial education background, I just played my insurance companies against each other and I said, hey, this is what I'm paying here. Is there any chance you can reduce it? And they said, no, man, we can't. I said, oh, I'll show you. Went to the other one. Da, 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 da. Then they gave me a quote. Then I went back to the other and I said, hey, the other people are saying this. What are you saying? And they said, oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Yeah. No, we'll review. And it's just like, oh, is it actually that simple? You just have to show your provider, your service provider, because we are clients at the end of the day. It's our money that we're spending. So you just have to show your service provider that there's someone who's willing to offer you something better for cheaper in order for them to now jump up out of their seats and make a plan to help you save money. So sometimes it's us as consumers taking the initiative and realizing that the power is in our hands. It's my money. It's mine.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm glad that we touched on savings, but I also want to touch on investments as well, Mapalo as well. I know that your money can lie there, but it kind of needs to do something while it's lying in a particular place. Lucinda Erasmus just said, what are the panelists' views on cryptocurrencies and those type of investments, Mapalo?
Why do I get the tough questions? Okay, so this is the truth, right, Leanne? I do not invest in things I do not know, okay? And cryptocurrencies is exactly one of those things. So remember, we have spoken about financial education, financial empowerment, financial literacy. If you are not empowered in the basic stuff, and this is where people get everything wrong, is that, you know, you hear about the latest get rich quick scheme, you hear about the latest you know, this is going to give you a return of 40%, this is going to give you a return of so much, and people fall for that. Unfortunately for me, if I do not know of this thing, I will not invest it. And so I have not invested in cryptocurrency yet, right? And I say yet because I have not gained enough knowledge for me to be confident enough to go and say, okay, I have cryptocurrency. Sure. But again, if I could ask right now, Lucinda, do you know about unit trusts? Do you know about exchange traded funds? Do you know about tax-free savings accounts? Do you know about retirement annuities? Do you know about your pension? If you are working for your employer, do you know what's going on with your pension or provident fund at the moment? And if the answer is no, then clearly 100% you are not ready to invest in cryptocurrency. If If you answered no to any of those 5 questions, the answer is 100% no, you are not ready to invest in cryptocurrency. If you've ticked off all the boxes and you've even gone to shares in companies, shares in companies that you think that will do well in the future, shares in companies that you think will grow, then sure, you can go to cryptocurrency. But before that, if you have not learned about these things, if you have not educated yourself about these things, then please, let's go back to basics. And for me, that's always my message, is that when it comes to personal finance, we want to talk about stuff, but trust me, the simple, basic stuff works over and over and over again. The basic stuff has made more millionaires than the fancy stuff that sounds amazing, sounds like, oh my goodness, yo, she's talking like, ooh, she knows what she's saying. The basic stuff works all the time over and over again. So I do not invest in cryptocurrency just yet because I have not educated myself enough about it. I'm not comfortable with it yet. Maybe one day, but not right now.
But not right now. We've got a question coming through from Una Rueda, who says, I am not a disciplined saver. Is there any advice and what can I do? Mapalo.
Can I answer this one, Leanne? Yes, I love this question. I love this question because I've been there myself, and many people who have approached me have been there themselves. I actually got a DM 2 days ago of someone who said, I have saved 5,000 Rand for the first time. I'm a working adult. I have been working for almost 10 years. I had never ever saved until I heard you say, pay yourself first. And what is the concept of paying yourself first? The concept of paying yourself first is when money hits your account, you transfer it to a completely different account altogether, a savings account or some sort of investment. Before, you know what, Leanne, again, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to basics. I always want to go back to basics. Is, do you have an emergency fund? People often talk about investments. People talk about, investing and all this wonderful stuff. But do you have an emergency fund? Because if you do not have an emergency fund, you will go back to using credit. That's a given. If you do not have an emergency fund, if you don't have some sort of savings set aside, you will go back to using a credit card, overdraft, or a personal loan. So do you have some sort of an emergency fund before you go to savings, before you go to investments? And how do you do that? Number one, by paying yourself first. And the easiest way to do that is to automate your savings, okay? And automating your savings means that if you know you get paid on the 25th, on the 30th, or whenever it is that you get paid, you know that you have instructed your bank to deposit money or to do a debit order into a completely different account. Because how many times as money comes into your account, you think to yourself, you know what, this month I'm going to save X amount of money. Then the month ends and you haven't saved a cent of it because, well, you found a way to spend it on shoes. You found a way to spend it on eating out with your friends. I know that's definitely my downfall. I love eating out, well, before COVID-19. But it's making sure and mitigating against your own weaknesses by making sure that you automate your savings and investments and emergency fund to a completely different account. Yeah. Oftentimes what happens is that people will say, I'm going to save, and let's say they do. But let's say around the 21st, 3 days before, 4 days before payday, you take that money because now you've run out and you start swiping it. So that's how people actually, because most people do save, some people do save, but they end up depleting their savings because they're not disciplined enough. That money is still in their bank account, the normal bank, transactional bank account where they use it. And it's the same story, it's the same vicious cycle, but discipline yourself enough to put it in a completely different bank account where it's not as easily accessible, maybe like a 7-day notice account, or even a 2-day notice account where you know that, you know what, you will get penalized for taking out this money. But it is all about discipline. But I 100% I understand that not everyone is as disciplined, myself included, but it's putting things in place to make sure that your weaknesses don't overpower you.
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you, I absolutely love this. I even want to get to retirement planning. I think we still have some time for retirement planning. Tlalane, can I ask you about that? Mapalo, Siba, whoever wants to jump in? You're welcome to.
I can
Do you
jump
want to
in,
take it, Mabena?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say something a little bit short because I'm very passionate about retirement, and I know you probably heard your favorite personal finance people or the financial services industry or anyone for that matter talking about retirement in such a bad light. And I think especially for young people, when you start making a bit of money, you think, goodness, you know what, things will remain this way, right? And through our parents, through the, you know what, I actually always ask this question. How many of you right now, how many of you know of a family or colleague or a friend who has a parent or yourself who needs to be taken care of at least once a month? That person calls once a month for them to ask for help. So all of us know someone who needs help, and everyone of those people had aspirations just like us. We thought, you know what, they also thought at such a young age that, you know what, I'm going to make so much money, it's going to be taken care of. But unfortunately, it does not work like that. You need to take care of the future right now by being conscious of it, by being completely conscious of it. And what does that look like? Number one, you need to make sure that you know what's going on with your pension or provident fund. If you're working for someone who is providing those things, don't leave it to them. Don't leave it to the human resources to figure it out. You need to be aware. You need to be involved when it comes to your pension or provident fund. You need to go to your human resources manager or your benefits manager and say, actually, what does this mean? Okay, so now I have a pension or provident fund, but you have risk benefits as well. And a lot of people oftentimes don't realize that they have disability, they have life cover, they have all sorts of things with their employer. So if you have an employer, you need to understand those things and thoroughly, so that if you go to find extra outside of your company, you know what you already have, what's existing already. Number two, you can put your money into a retirement annuity. And I know some people don't like retirement annuities. Well, for me, the way I would advocate for retirement annuities is that a lot of the times people are not disciplined enough to just say, okay, this money is for retirement. Come 5 years later, come 7 years later, come 10 years later, people are like, oh, I want to start that business. I'm going to take my retirement fund money and, start this business because I know it's going to work out. For sure, it can, but there's a possibility as well of that not working out. So you need to look at a retirement annuity in the light that, you know what, this is money that will hold me accountable, that if, goodness, things do not go right, that I will still have money at the end of the day. So a retirement annuity is very important, but also there are tax benefits. And I know we don't have enough time for me to go into that. Then the other thing is you can supplement your income or your retirement income through a tax-free savings account. I know, hopefully there's no one from a bank. I know we're not being sponsored by a bank here, but your tax-free savings account should not be with a bank. If it is for long-term investing, it should not be with a bank. I don't care whichever way you look at it, it should not be with a bank. It should be with an asset manager where you can access equities and all sorts of things. But your retirement is important. Your retirement is something that you should think about as early as possible.
Yeah, 100%. Cebu?
Oh, I was just going to say, I look at my mom. My mom is 70 and she started working, I think her first job when coming back from exile was in 1994, and she retired 20 years later. She paid off her car. She paid off her 3 houses. She traveled to the Barbados. And this is from a combination of her pension and her savings. And she's been able to live month to month without me having to pay for her DSTV. So I think it also starts at home, right? Having that kind of reference to say, okay, this is the behavior that was, my mom, when she got to 3,500 in her bank account, she was broke. Didn't matter how much I wanted that pie at the tuck shop. She didn't have the money. She doesn't have 5 rand for me because she's reached 3,000. So that kind of behavior, learning it and seeing it from a reference point helped. But where we don't have references like that, we should become those references. We have siblings, we have cousins, aunts We have children. Let us be the ones to instill that kind of behavior in our homes so that we can have, in 20 years' time, daughters and nieces and cousins and aunts who are able to say, I had someone who did this, and that's why I'm able to do it for myself. Let us be the rich aunties. You know, the ones that bring the catering service and don't have to like be the one. Let us be to be the rich auntie and live our lives accordingly.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Siba.
So I'm probably the worst person to ask about retirement. So I was quite happy to pass the question on to Mapalo, because it's clearly an area of passion for her, because I did exactly what she said we shouldn't do. And I guess it goes back to that point I was making right up front when I said, forgive yourself. We've made so many mistakes. So many of us who have moved from job to job, because as I said earlier, I was a job hopper, used to cash out our retirement savings when we left from one company to the other to pay for a deposit on a car or a deposit on a house or whatever it was. For me, if that's where you still are, stop that behavior. If you're moving from one job to the other, no matter how desperately you need to pay the house or how desperately you need to access that fund, don't do it, because actually you are stealing from the future. Take that money from one employer and put it into the pension fund or the provident fund with the next employer. So I did that for the first time when I moved from my last employer to, well, not my current employer, but from my previous employer to my last employer. And I was shocked at how much it had grown. Because actually, if you get into the habit of just saying, it's not my money, I don't own it right now, it's Galani's future's money, and she's going to need it when she's there, you will actually realize how important it is to not cash it out when you don't need it. There's always circumstances under which one, unfortunately finds it's impossible not to. My mom is sick, and the only way I can do it is if I cash this money and, put her on some sort of treatment. Forgive yourself. Do it once, forgive yourself, move on, find other ways to make up for the mistake that you've made. But we have to be realistic with ourselves, and we have to have the discipline that it takes to create better futures for ourselves and for our children. Because when you are stealing from yourself in the future, ultimately you're stealing from your children, because it's them that are going to have to suffer ultimately. But I also quickly, Leanne, want to touch on credit as a tool for wealth creation. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions where credit is concerned. There is this concept around credit is a bad thing all around. Try and avoid credit as much as you possibly can, because it's never going to be good for you. Actually, guys, if you use the tool correctly, it will actually contribute to your betterment in the future. So if you're taking credit out to purchase a bond, or a house rather, you're taking out a bond to purchase a house, you're never going to have R1 million to buy a house cash. Go and take a bond, make sure you negotiate yourself the best possible interest rate, and buy yourself a house. That house will become an asset to you. And that is actually how you start to create wealth, is when you start acquiring assets that grow in value, and you're using credit as a tool to acquire those assets, then actually you're using credit in the right way. If you are taking out credit at the retail store, however, to buy a new pair of jeans, to buy the latest sneakers, then you're using it incorrectly. And that's where you get into trouble. Because that is momentary, the things that you're acquiring are not ultimately going to help you become or grow your asset base. They're not going to enable you to grow wealth. So don't use credit in a way that is going to ultimately disempower you in the future. And understand that if you're using it correctly, credit can be a really good tool to help you build an asset base.
Love it. Last question going through to, I think, hello, I'm going to put it through to you. Anthea Williams says, is it possible to save when one has more expenses than you can afford, especially during lockdown and the pay cuts?
Yeah. So, you know what, Leanne, I definitely sympathize with people who are going through a tough time right now, because as you mentioned earlier, almost 2 more than 2 million women have lost their jobs. So definitely there's that dynamic, right? But I always say, and I truly, truly believe that there's always something that you can do, especially if you want to get in control of your finances. Number one, I think, you know what, there's two ways in which you can start saving, okay? Number one, you need to go back to your budget. I know it sounds boring, I know it sounds old school, but your budget is there for a reason, to say, okay, actually what is coming in and what is going out? And what is going out? And oftentimes people don't want to do a budget because, goodness, it's boring, it's tedious, it doesn't work. You know, I've tried this before and it doesn't work. But it's only because people set unrealistic goals for themselves when it comes to their budget. You have to look at your lifestyle. What is the lifestyle that I've been living? And what is this lifestyle that I do want versus what I'm living right now versus what I intend on living, right? So you have to go back to your budget and say, okay, are there things that I need to cut out? And oftentimes, Leanne, people don't want to make the tough decisions. So I know people always want to kill me for this. Every single time I say it, look at your subscriptions. If you have a DSTV full bouquet, can you decrease it? And sometimes, Kalani, I know she mentioned the fact that, you know what, if your kids are used to a certain lifestyle, but there are some situations that warrant for you to sit down and be honest with your family and say, you know what, I've got myself into a mess and I need to get out. We need to get this family out of this mess and make sure that we are on the road to just being comfortable, right? Because having consumer debt, the bad debt that you spoke about, is not good. You don't feel amazing at night, you go to sleep and you're anxious. So you need to look at your budget and see where can you cut back. And oftentimes people think that, you know what, cutting back means, oh goodness, I'll never ever live the lifestyle I want. No, a year of sacrifice can make a massive, massive difference to your finances. Sometimes that's all it takes. So make sure number one, you cut out some stuff. If you can't do that, or you've cut back and you still feel like, you know what, there's something else I need to do. You have skills, you have experiences, you have capabilities that you can monetize to make sure that you have some sort of extra income. I will tell you a story. I have one woman who said, you know what, after having spoken to you, after having listened to you, I started my side business where I was selling cookies. And that money allowed me to do my nails. And for me, that's why I always say, I do not believe that personal finance should be a hard thing, should be, oh my goodness, I deprive myself. If you want to go do your nails, please go do your nails. But if your budget or the funds that you earn do not allow you to make that money, find another way to make sure that you get your nails done. It doesn't have to come from your salary, taking away from your priorities. So it's either one of two things, cut back or make more income to make sure that you start saving. And it can be easy. It really can be easy. But another thing, Leanne, that I wanted to sort of touch on before I know we get cut off is what Kalani was talking about, and also Siba was talking about, that, you know, Leanne said, you know, she's the type of person who took the money out, she cashed her money out when it came to pension and provident fund. Sure, I think she's read my book, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich, because I speak about you need to forgive yourself for your past money mistakes, right? The thing about cashing out money all the time is that you will continue to do so because you have not changed your habits. Remember, money is all about behavior. Money is all about the habits that you built over the years. So you getting a rich, because basically it's a windfall. It's a money windfall that you get when you leave your employer and you think, oh goodness, I'm going to plug it in here, I'm going to plug it in there to make sure that I close off all my debts and make sure that things are sorted. But oftentimes people find themselves in the very same situation where they have lots of debt, where they started with a negative, because they have not learned what makes me want to get in debt. What makes me go out, get a clothing account, and buy the most expensive car that I cannot afford, buy the most expensive house that possibly, you know what, I should have gone for something lower, even though the bank said you qualify. Because remember, you qualifying and affordability are two different things. So it's just about that mindset, going back to that mindset and saying, actually, why do I keep finding myself in this same situation where I'm in debt, even when I've paid it off, but now I'm again back into credit card debt, again into overdraft debt, again into personal loan debt. So you need to find what drives me to get into all of this debt? And again, I know this is not money talk, but it always starts within. And if you can figure that out, trust me, you will do much better than, most of your peers.
Oh, ladies, this is gold. This is absolutely gold. As we wrap things up, just maybe your inspiration on what we as women, because that's why we're here. We're here as women, supporting women and helping to grow one another and inspire one another. What should we avoid? What are the pitfalls that we should avoid in these next coming months as we make our way through this pandemic? And what are the basic lessons that we need to get right, the money lessons that we need to get right now, the most basic things? I know we've touched on it, but just to reiterate, Cebu, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so I'll just speak as someone who runs a business, and I think my realist relationship is between income, expenditure, saving. And as a business owner, I learned very early that pay yourself a salary, and a salary that you can afford, so that you're able to and budget, right? So you've got employees, you've got overheads, you've got to take care of, manage your finances so that you're able to take care of people, because it's not their problem when a client doesn't pay on time. On the 30th, come what may, their salaries have to come in. That's one side. But secondly, when your business has money, it's not your money. The business bank account is not your pot of gold. So stick to your salary and work with and spend your money within your means as the business owner. So just because we've cashed in on a big invoice doesn't mean I can go buy a Rolls Royce tomorrow. No, I'm still sticking within my salary. And from a budgeting and forecasting perspective, then only am I able to say, okay, I can afford a salary increase, and so I can do the same for my employees. So my biggest lesson actually as a business owner, your business account is not your personal pot of gold. That's it.
Cha-ching. I love it. Thank you so much, Cebu. Leilani, final words from you.
Absolutely. You cannot afford to be a business person and not make your salary, but you also can't afford to make your business your personal or your business income your personal sort of bank account. That is recipe for failure. For me, I think the big lesson is what I've been preaching from the onset, which is take ownership of your financial journey. Do not outsource that. I like that word that Mapalo used. Do not outsource that to your financial services provider. Negotiate. You will be shocked at how much savings there are to be made if you negotiate on your interest rate, if you negotiate on your bank, fees. If your bank puts one amount for you, walk out with something completely different because you have negotiated, and that talks to owning your journey. So those for me are some really critical things that people need to do.
Owning your journey. Could not agree with you more. Mapalo, final words from you.
So my final words are always a bit controversial. Is that no one is coming to save you. Your financial journey, especially as a woman, no one is coming to save you. Not your partner, not your financial advisor, not the financial services companies. No one is coming to save you. You are capable, number one, as a woman, to make sure that your finances are in order. You are capable of learning. Oftentimes people talk about personal finances, this difficult thing. But I often look at women and I say, Leanne, when you started at your job, you probably were not that fantastic, right? You probably were not amazing, you were not great because you had the jitters, you were nervous. Just like myself, with my job when I started in the financial service industry, I was not confident, just like Kalani, just like Sibu. When you're starting anything, so as with your financial journey, you might not be confident, but you have to stick it out to make sure that you pull through onto the other side. No one is coming to save you. You are there for yourself, and you are capable. You are capable of taking control of your finances.
Oh, powerful stuff. It's all about financial empowerment. Ladies, you have done the absolute most. I want to thank you so much for such a beautiful, constructive afternoon. And for anybody who wants to get hold of your book, Mapalo, where can they get hold of you? Or the book?
Yes, thank you so much, Leanne. Yes, so the book is available at all exclusive books countrywide, and available at 240 Rand, and also on takealot.com.
Yes, fabulous stuff. Tlalani, anybody who wants to find out more about credit life insurance, where can they get hold of Yalu?
www.yalu.co.za. On all social media platforms, it is at Yalu_SA, and we are almost always ready. Well, not, we're always ready to take a call or to walk you through.
I love it. And for anybody who's looking to work with the Duma Collective and open up Cape Town Stadium, how do they get hold of you, Cebu?
Look, you can Google us, Duma Collective. We are available on all social media platforms, as well as Cebu Mabena across the platforms. It's so simple. Say the name, we will come up.
Boom.
Do I need a million followers?
You need a million followers? I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to get that.
Me too.
Let's do a trade exchange. You do our financial management, I'll do your brand management, and then we are all saving.
Done.
You see, this is how it happens. Thank you so much to all of our amazing panelists, Cebu, Mabena, Tlalani, Ntuli, Mapalo, Maku. They've been absolutely amazing. And I hope that you at home or in the office or wherever you are have certainly enjoyed this webinar. I know that I've taken so much from it, and I hope that you have done the same thing too. Now, of course, the matter of that amazing hamper that we're giving away, a 1,000 Rand Engen voucher, as well as a 1,000 Rand Canal Walk voucher. And the winner of that amazing hamper goes to none other than Roxanne Abrams. Congratulations, Roxanne Abrams. Good Up FM will be reaching out to you to make sure that you get your incredible prize. Thank you so much to all of you for making the time to be a part of our Warrior Woman webinar. It was absolutely wonderful. Next week, we have our final one in this series, and we're talking about finding your purpose. And we've got some incredible female panelists on the panel again to chat us through that. But be safe, take care of yourself. Happy 1st of September, and may this new season bring new and incredible things for all of us, because guess what? We could all use some of that. Until next week, ciao. God bless.